Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling something I know a lot of you are super curious about, and that's boosting dopamine naturally.
Sounds like a good one.
Yeah, right? You guys sent in a ton of articles, research papers, a lot to dig into here. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
It
We're
is.
talking neurotransmitters, food, supplements, whole bunch of stuff. So are you ready to unlock some dopamine secrets?
Let's do it. Dopamine's super interesting. It's way more than just, that feel-good chemical, right?
Right, yeah.
It's like a key player in this whole complex system that affects so many things, like
Hmm.
your mood, your focus, how motivated you feel, even, how smoothly you can move.
Yeah, so before we get into all the how-tos of boosting it. Let's take a step back. Can you just break it down for us? What exactly is dopamine and why is it so important?
All right, so think of dopamine like a tiny little chemical messenger,
Yeah.
right? And it's just zipping between brain cells, back and forth,
Yeah.
relaying these signals. So it's really all about communication. And those signals, they trigger this chain reaction that, ultimately influences how you feel, how you think, and how you act.
Wow.
So when dopamine's flowing freely, everything's good. You feel energized, you're focused, you're driven, you feel good. But then when those signals get disrupted or dopamine levels dip, well, that's when things can get a bit tricky.
So what does that actually look like though? Low dopamine, I mean. Is it just like feeling a little bit blah or is there more to it?
It's it can show up in a bunch of different ways, actually. You might feel really fatigued, have trouble concentrating, experience some mood swings, just lack motivation in general. Even feelings of sadness, that can be a sign. And in
Mhm.
some cases, it can actually even affect your coordination and movement.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow. So it really is more than just like chasing those happy highs, right?
exactly.
It's about maintaining this healthy balance for your overall well-being. Okay, well, let's get to the good stuff, though. Let's talk about the boosting part, because your articles had a ton of natural ways to increase dopamine. What really jumped out at you?
Well, the first thing I noticed was just how much emphasis there was on physical activity.
Oh, yeah. Exercise, right.
Exercise, exactly. And it's not just about physical health, right?
Yeah.
It's a really powerful way to stimulate dopamine production.
Makes sense.
And we're not even talking about, crazy intense workouts or anything. Even moderate exercise, like going for a brisk walk or dancing,
Oh, fun.
that can make a difference.
So getting that heart rate up, even a little bit, sends those dopamine signals firing.
Mm.
I like it. And speaking of things I like, the Trend This Talk blog that you sent, they highlighted some seriously delicious dopamine-boosting
Oh,
foods.
yeah, those are good.
Bananas, almonds, eggs, dark chocolate. Tell me more about that connection between food and dopamine.
Yeah, so it all comes down to the nutrients these foods provide. They actually act as building blocks for dopamine, or they support its production in the brain, like bananas, for example. They're packed with tyrosine, and that's an amino acid that's a precursor to dopamine.
Okay.
Almonds have a ton of magnesium, and that plays a role in regulating dopamine.
Uh-huh.
And then dark chocolate, that one's got flavonoids.
Ooh, fancy.
Right, they've got antioxidant properties, so they may protect the cells that produce dopamine from damage.
So we're not just satisfying our taste buds, we're actually nourishing our brain.
Exactly.
I like that. Now, before we go too crazy on the chocolate, let's talk about sleep. Your articles mentioned a strong connection between sleep and dopamine levels.
Oh, yeah. Sleep is huge.
So what's the deal there?
When you're sleep deprived, your brain's dopamine receptors actually become less sensitive.
Interesting.
So it's harder for the dopamine to do its job effectively.
Okay.
It's kind of like, when you're trying to listen to a radio and there's all that static, it's just
Yeah.
not as clear.
Yeah.
So prioritizing rest, that is crucial for supporting those healthy dopamine levels and just letting your brain function at its best.
Hmm.
And it's not even just about the quantity of sleep.
Right.
The quality matters too. You want to aim for that deep, restful sleep
No.
to really recharge those dopamine batteries.
So a good night's sleep is like clearing out the static and letting the dopamine come through loud and clear.
Exactly.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've got good sleep, good food, getting active, all things we can do naturally to boost that dopamine, right?
Exact.
But the blog post also talked about some supplements that could help.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious to hear more about those.
Yeah, so the Trend This Talk blog highlighted 5 key supplements that have been shown to, be promising in terms of boosting dopamine.
Okay.
So there's L-tyrosine, rhodiola rosea, mucuna pruriens, omega-3 fatty acids, and vitamin D.
Okay, those are some big words.
Yeah.
So can you like break them down a little bit? What does each supplement actually do in the body?
Sure. So let's start with L-tyrosine. It's actually a precursor to dopamine,
Okay.
which means it's, giving your body the raw materials it needs to make more dopamine.
So it's like giving your brain a boost of building blocks to create more dopamine.
Exactly.
I like that analogy.
Yeah. And this can be especially helpful, if you're feeling stressed out or fatigued.
That makes sense.
Okay.
What about rhodiola rosea? That one sounds kind of interesting.
Rhodiola rosea is pretty cool. It's an adaptogenic herb, which basically means it helps your body adapt to stress.
Okay.
And it's a bit of a multitasker, actually.
Oh.
It works on a lot of different pathways in the brain, one of those being increasing dopamine levels.
Interesting.
So that can lead to, better mental clarity, less stress, all those good things.
So it's calming things down.
Yeah,
A&D boosting dopamine at the same time. That's pretty impressive.
it is. It's a good one.
All right. And then there's mucuna pruriens. Am I saying that right?
You got it. Mucuna pruriens. It's also known as velvet bean.
Velvet bean.
And this one contains L-DOPA, which is actually a direct precursor to dopamine.
Okay.
So that means it can have a much more immediate impact on dopamine levels.
Wow.
Yeah, and potentially improve mood. There's even been some studies showing that it might help with symptoms of depression in certain cases.
Wow. So it's like a direct line to boosting dopamine.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, that's cool. What about those omega-3s that we always hear about? I know they're good for brain health, but how do they affect dopamine specifically?
So omega-3s are essential for those healthy cell membranes in your brain.
Okay, yeah.
And that includes those in your dopamine neurons. So they actually help improve the fluidity of the membranes,
Okay.
which then supports dopamine receptor function. So it's kind of like making sure that those communication lines are clear and everything's working properly.
So omega-3s aren't necessarily like boosting dopamine production, but they're helping the existing dopamine work better.
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay, and then finally there's vitamin D. And I always think of vitamin D as, being important for bones and the immune system.
Mm-hmm.
So how does it connect to dopamine?
Yeah, it's funny, right? Vitamin D actually plays a role in a bunch of different brain functions, including dopamine production.
Really?
Yeah, there have been some studies that have shown a connection between vitamin D deficiency and mood disorders.
Oh, wow.
It seems like vitamin D is actually involved in both, like, the synthesis and the release of dopamine.
So even sunshine can indirectly boost our dopamine levels.
It's true.
I love that. Now, the blog post also shared some testimonials from people who tried these supplements. It was pretty cool. There was Sarah, who was raving about rhodiola rosea for energy and focus.
Oh, nice.
And then there was Michael, who said L-tyrosine helps him stay sharp under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And Emma, who credits omega-3s with improving her focus and her mood. Pretty impressive.
It is. And, these stories really highlight the potential benefits of these supplements. But it is important to remember that everyone's biochemistry is different, right?
Right.
So what works amazingly for one person might have a different effect on someone else.
That's true.
That's why it's super important to, talk to a healthcare provider before you start taking any new supplement regimen.
Oh, I was just going to ask about that.
Yeah.
Safety first, right? Even if they're natural supplements, there's still things to keep in mind.
Absolutely. A healthcare provider can help you figure out the right dosage for you. See if there are any potential interactions with medications you're already taking or any health conditions you might have.
Okay.
They can also give you personalized advice based on what your needs are and what your goals are.
So it's not just about popping a pill and hoping for the best.
Yeah,
You really want to be informed and work with a professional.
exactly.
What are some other things listeners should keep in mind when they're, thinking about supplements?
Well, I think it's really important to remember that supplements are meant to complement a healthy lifestyle,
Okay.
not replace it. So all those foundational things we talked about earlier.
Right. Like exercise, good nutrition, sleep.
Exactly. Those are still the most important things.
Those are the cornerstones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So supplements can be like a helpful tool, but they work best as part of that bigger picture.
Exactly.
And even with natural supplements, there's always a chance of side effects.
Yeah, even though they come from natural sources, they can still have side effects.
Right.
It's always a good idea to start slowly with any new supplement
Okay.
and just pay attention to how your body's reacting. Some common side effects can be, nausea, headaches, or digestive issues.
Yeah, makes sense.
So just be cautious and listen to your body.
But it's always better to err on the side of caution. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about what dopamine is, natural ways to boost it, and even, dove into those supplement options.
Hmm.
So what does all this mean for our listeners who are trying to boost their dopamine levels? What are they supposed to take away from all this?
Well, the key takeaway is that you have the power to influence your dopamine levels, right? Just through the lifestyle choices you make.
I like that.
And it doesn't have to be super overwhelming.
Right.
Just start by incorporating those simple but powerful natural boosters into your routine. Get moving, eat those delicious dopamine boosting foods, make sure you're getting enough sleep, and find healthy ways to manage stress.
I love that. It's
Right.
about empowering ourselves to make those positive changes, right?
Absolutely.
Changes that support our overall well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're thinking about trying supplements, just remember to do your research, talk to your doctor, and listen to your body.
Yes.
Now, before we wrap things up, do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners on this, dopamine journey?
Yeah, I think it's just don't underestimate the power of small but consistent actions. This isn't about some quick fix. It's about creating those healthy habits that are going to support you in the long run.
Okay.
So start with one small change today, whether that's, going for a walk, eating more of those dopamine boosting foods, or even just taking a couple minutes each day to practice gratitude or mindfulness.
Yeah.
Just start small and build from there.
That's such a great reminder. It's not about being perfect. It's about those consistent efforts that make a difference.
Exactly. And remember, boosting your dopamine, that's an ongoing journey. Be patient with yourself, celebrate those wins, and keep exploring to find what works best for you.
It is, right? It's
Yeah.
like a journey. We talk about supplements, but it's really about taking all of this information and like figuring out what works best for you.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
It's about experimenting and finding what really moves the needle for you.
I love that. This has been such an insightful deep dive into the world of dopamine. I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too. It's fascinating, right?
It really is. And I hope our listeners feel the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, guys, you can find more information on everything we've talked about today in our blog post.
Yes, we have a ton of additional resources linked in our blog, and you can find that link right in the description. Definitely check those out if you want to, dig a little deeper into any of this stuff.
Yeah. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into dopamine, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes.
We've got some exciting topics coming up, so stay tuned.
You do.
All right, everyone, until next time, happy dopamine boosting.